Hi guys, this is going to be a video on making some materials. We're going to use CryEngine, but most of this stuff is applicable to anything that you want to use. So this is going to be the starting point for this, just doing some bricks. So this is what it looks like in Photoshop, and all I've done with this so far is I've just downloaded this texture of bricks off CG Textures, and I've just made it so that it's tileable. Okay, so what I want to do first of all is to sort out this texture as a diffuse texture. So on diffuse texture we want to try and get rid of as much kind of specular and shadow and that kind of thing as we can, and then let our bump map, our normal map and our spec maps sort of do that for us. So if you look at this brick, there's all these little bits of specular highlights off this. This is a good example where there's kind of specular on top and there's shadow underneath. Again there, this is kind of all sort of specular in here, and then more shadowed on the underside there. So to get rid of some of that and to bring this back to something that's going to work nicer as just a flat diffuse texture, I will go to Image, Adjustments and Shadows and Highlights, and then tick this Show More Options. And if I turn this shadows amount up to 100, it's going to get rid of a lot of those shadows in there. So if I put that on and off, and if I turn the highlights up to 100, it's going to get rid of some of the highlights as well. So if we bring these radius settings down, that'll really kind of, completely get rid of all the shadows and highlights in that. So this is just basically the pure colour values on this rather than all the bump detail and surface detail. We don't want to kill this texture that amount though. Obviously this is going to look really bad if we use this as a diffuse texture, but if we bring some of these radius settings up a little bit and hopefully maybe move some of these settings as well. So we can get rid of most of the detail here that we don't want. Stay a little bit more. Okay, so that's got rid of some of the colour in here as well. But that's okay. So I'll okay that. So again, that's off and that's on, and it's just brought this back to being a bit more uniform, flat lighting. Okay. And then what I'll do, this Photoshop file's already set up, so I'm just doing this again, so just ignore what's in there. What I'll do is I'll take the... Okay, so I can take the original layer that we had and just maybe use an overlay, or in fact I'll just leave that set to normal, and then I'll just bring the opacity down. So I can just use this to kind of blend the original back in or out as much as I want, and find something that still doesn't completely lose the look of these bricks. So that looks fine. What I'll do now is, just because I want some of this grain and stuff in these bricks, but I've kind of lost a little bit of that from changing the values on that, changing the shadows and highlights. So to bring some of that back in, I'll just get a new texture. Okay, so I've just gone and grabbed this texture off CG Textures, and what I'll do is I'll make it 256 by 256, and then copy that into my file, and then I can just kind of tile this up. So I just went and grabbed the tiling texture. So I'll just cover the whole thing with that, and then I can set that to probably an overlay, and just bring the opacity down. Okay, so if I turn that off and on, you can see that's kind of bringing a grain back into and some high detail into these bricks. But the detail that we're putting on here now has kind of got too much shadow and highlights and all that sort of stuff on it. So I might just desaturate that a bit as well, like that. Okay. Right, so when you're making bricks like this, I mean, this as a diffuse map, this isn't too bad now. It's kind of quite flat, and it's ready to go. Particularly for a tiling texture, you want to make sure that there isn't too much detail popping out, otherwise you'll really notice that being tiled over and over. The next thing we want to do is to make a good normal map out of this. So to make a decent normal map, if I was to now put this through ND2, what you're going to get is a really kind of noisy normal map. So the way that ND works is a little bit more complicated than this, but essentially it's going to look at this image and use it as a bit of a height map. So anywhere that's black, like in here, it's going to say is low down, and anywhere that's white, it's going to say is high up. So that's going to be okay in some areas, like for some of these cracks, but we're also going to get things like this brick, although this brick is quite a flat thing here, so this layer, so that brick that I've circled, although that's quite flat shape, we're going to get loads of surface detail off this from all of these little grains of black and white, and the fact that this brick is quite dark as well means that there's quite a lot of contrast in that. So I can do that just to demonstrate. So if I just use a sharp brick preset, which is probably the best one for this style of brick. Okay, so this is the normal map that created, and it's definitely not done a bad job. We've got the shape of the bricks quite nicely coming out of that normal map, but it's quite indiscriminate about the heights of these things. And you know, really what we want for this normal map is we want these bricks to pop out nicely and then just have a little bit of surface detail on top of them, and we're not going to get them from this. So the only way we're really going to get that is we can try altering the levels of these things, or maybe messing with curves. So if I put some curves on top of that, and then I could maybe try and cut out the black and white detail. So basically I just want to get something that looks like the shape of the bricks. So depending on what your bricks are, you might be able to use the curves or mess with your levels or something to get that out. just going to delete that. Realistically though, the only way you're going to get a good result out of this, especially for these bricks, is to come in and to simply draw a height map yourself. So come in with make a white layer, decrease the opacity so you can see underneath it, and then just come in and draw with a black brush the shape of all of these bricks. So I'm just doing this not on my tablet at the moment, just so that I can record the screen. So you definitely would want to use a graphics tablet to do this. But yeah, to get a good result, you're going to need to go through and to draw this height map sort of around that. So I've got one of these that I've already made, which is down here. Oops, let's bring that to the top. Okay, just delete that layer. Okay, so that's just a quick, simple black and white displacement map. And what I'll do actually is, let me just duplicate this. What I want to do is I want to paint some, just to kind of finish this diffuse map off, I want to paint some moss into all of the cracks in between the bricks. So to do that, I'm just going to I've got a mossy texture at the bottom here again. Let's bring that to the top. Set the opacity up before. Sorry, just get rid of this. Okay, so I've just got a mossy texture like that, and what I'll do is I'll put that above this displacement layer. So I've just got this black and white image, and then straight above it I've got this image of moss. If I double click into this, or if I go to my the effects at the bottom here and go to blending options, then what I can say is I can say that anything that is underneath this, so on this layer here, this displaced copy layer, anything that's white on that, just delete it, and anything that's black, leave it in there. So I can just leave the moss into these areas. If you alt and click, you can kind of separate that as well to get a softer transition between the two. So with something like that, looks okay. Okay, and then I'll just merge those layers, and then I can use that. I'll try that as a colour layer, so you can see now the moss is just kind of growing into the cracks in between. I'll just duplicate that and use that as a multiply as well, and then just play with these until I'm happy with how that looks. I might increase the saturation on that one a bit. Okay, so now I've got this moss looking like it's growing in between all the cracks of the brick. Okay, so that'll be the diffuse texture done for this, and what I'll do is I'll just to make my normal map, I'm just going to get this displacement layer and stick it on the top, and then I'm going to decrease the opacity so that, again, basically what I'm doing is making a height map that's going to work nicely for a normal map. So anything that's black is low, anything that's white is high. So now I've got all these really dark areas that are going to be very low, and then in here on the top of the surface of the bricks I've got some kind of brighter grayscale. So I've got, you know, from white to kind of a very kind of light grey colour there. So if I create a normal map from this now, I should get a pretty decent result. So we'll just go to presets again, sharp brick. When you're using ND2 with CryEngine, you just want to make sure that in your preferences, so file, preferences, flip normal channel, make sure that the Y channel is flipped. That's just the way that CryEngine wants that channel to be. So I'll go to presets and I'll use the sharp brick preset and active dock. Okay, so this is the result that came out of that. So this is what we had before making, sort of hand painting that displacement map, and this is what we've got after. And this looks a lot better as a normal map, but we can probably play with some of these sliders to make this even better, so I'll keep that one up high. I'll turn this one down a bit so that my bricks are quite flat on the top of them. I don't really know what all these do until I move the slider up and down, so it is just a case of experimenting. Okay, so that looks alright, and I can save this. Now, in fact, let's go back to our diffuse map. I'll get rid of that layer now, I don't need it, and I'll just save this as a diffuse. So, let me just go into the objects folder for CryEngine, and let's call this tutorial. I'll keep that called brick2diff. So I'll save my PSD in there, and then I'll save it as a CryTiff as well. And this is all fine. I'm just going to up the resolution and keep it at 1024, and I'll change it to diffuse high quality, and the rest of that is fine. Okay, so that's the diffuse done, and let's just save the normal as well. So I'll call that brick2_ddn, save that as a PSD, and then save that as CryTiff as well. So because I put ddn at the end of it, it knows already that this is a normal map. And just for the sake of this, I'm going to keep that at 1024 as well. Right, okay, so if I come across to CryEngine now, so this was just the basic diffuse texture that's in there, and I'm going to replace that. So if I open my material editor and go to new material at the top, put that in the same place, so brick tutorial, I'll just call that brick material, and I can load in my diffuse. It's there. And I'll just apply that to this material here. Okay, so maybe I've taken a little bit too much of the colour out of that diffuse, and I might go back and put some of that in. Okay, and to do that I'm just going to go down to this layer that I had, which was just the overlay of the original image, and I'll just increase the opacity of that a little bit. So I'll save that over the top of that one. Oops, sorry. Save that over the top of that CryTiff. Okay. And that'll do for now. So, right, the next thing that I want to do with this is to, in CryEngine I just wanted to put in an environment probe so that I can see some proper speculas and stuff off this once we start putting those in. So to do that I'm just going to go to MISC at the side, environment probe, and drop an environment probe in, like that. and there's not going to be a lot to reflect in the world at the moment from this environment probe because there isn't anything in the world, but that'll be fine for the moment. So I'll set in fact I'll leave the cube map resolution maybe 256. So this is going to kind of spin round and take, sort of like it's taking a panoramic photo. So it's going to take a photo out of each side of this cube and create a cube map. So I'll hit generate cube map, and then I'll turn the environment probe on, so active, and everything will probably go pink at this point, but you just need to give it a second to compile that cube map. There we go. And then I'm just going to bring the diffuse colour of that light down a little bit, and I'll have a little bit of HDR in there. I might make the diffuse colour slightly blue actually, just because this is outside. So in fact what I'll also do is I will just make a copy of this and rotate it 90 degrees like that. And I'm going to go to the time of day and just move the sun a little bit. So if I find where the sun is, and let's just move it around the way, that way. Okay, so the sun is kind of shining on to this. Right, so if we go back to my material editor, and just quickly to show what that environment probe is doing, if I set my diffuse colour on here down to 0, so that I've just got black material on there, and I set my spec colour up to something quite high. If I set my gloss right up on this to 255, then I'll see it'll basically look like this is a mirror. So this is also a mirror, but it's obviously just mirroring the sky, which is just plain blue. So this one is kind of, that's why I put this one on its side, so it's easier to see what it's doing. So essentially my spec colour is just going to, my diffuse colour is going to be that diffuse that we've got on there. So the higher I turn my diffuse colour, the more of that is going to come through, or the brighter that's going to be. And my spec colour is going to be how much of this reflection comes through. So the lower that is, if I turn that all the way down, I'll have no reflection. As I turn that up, you start to see some of the reflection coming through. And then my gloss, so just turn that down again. My gloss is going to be how blurry this image is. So if it's up at 255, I'm going to turn that all the way down. So if it's up at 255, then I'm going to have a pin sharp image, or at least as sharp an image as I'm going to get from a 256 by 256 cube map. And then as I bring this gloss down, it's just going to blur. Oops, it's just going to blur that image. So this is the gloss value for something like glass or a mirror, or really, really shiny metal. Down here would be something like wood. Up here would probably be sort of some glossy plastic or something. Metal would be anywhere around here, depending on how shiny the metal was. And stone is probably somewhere around here as well. Again, depending on how shiny that stone is. But for the moment, let's just turn the spec off and turn the diffuse back on. So what I want to do is to set my diffuse. If I want my image in here to look the same as it does in Photoshop, I want to set my diffuse at about 180, and that should be roughly the same values. So anything higher than 180 in here is going to seem more bright than it does in Photoshop. Anything lower than 180 is going to seem darker. So when you're texturing, start these values off at 180. I think it might actually be 183 technically, is the sort of neutral, but anywhere around 180 will be fine. Okay, so we can bring in our bump map now. So if I bring in that bump map, you should see that's working quite nicely. And it's not just added loads of noise to these bricks, but it's mostly just pops the actual bricks in and out. So again, on that surface, if I was to take this off, it would look like that, and with it on, it'll look like that. So that normal map's working pretty good. Again, if I move my time of day around, you can see how that's moving across those surfaces as though the shadows are moving across them. Okay, so that is quite a nice clean normal map. Right, so the next thing we could do with is if I increase my spec on here now, then the look that I get isn't really right for brick because I've not got a spec map. So the glossiness is probably about right, somewhere around here, maybe even a bit lower. So you can see what the gloss will do. You know, up here it's going to make it look like it's wet or slimy, and down here it's just going to look quite flat and boring. So what's going to help with this is to have a proper spec map in. So for the sake of this, I'm just going to use undo again, and because we've got a nice clean normal map, I'll just try and get a decent spec map by converting the normal to a specular. Okay, so that's the result of that, which looks okay for a spec for this, and okay, so what I'll do with this spec is I will, that's fine like that. What I want to do is to make a gloss channel as well. So my glossiness is going to be kind of how shiny this is. So if you look at brick, you quite often in bricks you have little bits that kind of glitter, kind of like crystals in sand. So I want to try and simulate that in my gloss channel. So my gloss is going to go into the alpha channel of this spec map. And to make that glittery effect, all I'm going to do is make a new layer and fill it with white, and then just go filter and noise and add noise. And then I'll just add some noise. Like, in fact, this would probably be better if I had filled it with black. Fill that with black, and then noise, add noise. I'll just add an amount of noise until it looks about right. We'll leave it set like that. Maybe a bit less. Okay, like that. And what I'm going to do is to just decrease that a little bit. So I'll just duplicate this spec as well. So I'm just going to keep that, and I'm just going to make this gloss channel in here. So in fact, let's put this on top. So let's have this noise here. And then set that to a multiply like that. So that way it will get rid, there'll only be noise on the bricks, it'll kind of get rid of it from inside these areas. Or mostly get rid of it from inside those areas. So I'll merge those, and then I don't want my gloss to be quite so extreme, so I want the gloss on these shiny bits to be of a value of about probably over 200, so almost white. So on a scale of 0 to 255, so 0 is black, 255 is white, then I want the speckles, some of them to be completely white, but I don't want the black to be completely black, except for maybe the areas in between here. But I'll just go to my levels now, and I'll bring the output level up so that it is all kind of a bit more grayscale, like that. And then what I'll do, actually, I'll get this displacement map that we used to that one, this just black and white image from in my diffuse, and I'll copy and paste that in there, and again set that to a multiply just to get rid of the spec from the areas in between the bricks. Okay, that'll do for my gloss map. So this is going to be my gloss map here, and that's going to be my specular map. And I'll just get that gloss map, copy, go into my channels, new channels, I've got an alpha channel, and paste it in there. Okay, now I'll save that as so I'll call it brick2 underscore spec. Save that as PSD, and then save that again as a CryEngine. And this time I want to make sure that I'll turn this to 1024 by 1024, and I want to make sure that I'm saving the RGB and the alpha channel, so I've got it set to RGB alpha, and I'll set it to specular high quality. Okay. So if I jump back into CryEngine now, then I can load in my spec map into here. So it's that one. And straight away you can see these bricks are looking a lot better now. So maybe bring my spec up a little bit. And I can mess with my gloss settings until I get this looking about right. So this is definitely too glossy for brick, and down here isn't glossy enough, you're not really seeing anything. So brick's probably got a value of somewhere around here. But what I want to do is, because I'm going to be using a gloss map, I'll just set that all the way up to 255. And then if I come down to my shader generation parameters and say that my gloss map is in my specular alpha, then I should be able to see some little grains coming through this. Just set that a bit higher. So maybe let's just increase the just go to our levels for this and increase this a bit. Like that. And I'll copy that back into the alpha channel again. Put my spec back on. Save over the top of that. Okay. So yeah, now we're starting to get little sort of glossy bits coming through a little bit into this brick. So I'd say that noise was all a bit too I probably wanted the noise to be a bit larger on this, so there to be more space in between these dots. But I'll leave that how it is for now. Obviously once you get to this point, this is definitely starting to look better in terms of looking like brick. I think I can bring the diffuse down a little bit, and I can bring the actual spec level down a bit as well. as well. Okay. So yeah, that's definitely getting there now. It's starting to look like brick. At this point, you're never going to really get these, or certainly for me, I never get these spec maps and gloss maps right first time. Once I get to this point, I've got it into the game engine. It will take me a bit of going backwards and forwards between Photoshop and CryEngine just to get the map looking exactly right, but it's not looking too bad. Okay, so what I want to do now is just to put some parallax occlusion mapping on this just to show how that works. So to get parallax occlusion mapping working, you need to make sure that your config spec is set to high or very high, otherwise you won't see anything. And what we'll do for this is just go to Photoshop, and I'll just grab this displace texture that I've got. In fact, I'll just make that visible. So I've just got this black and white image, and I'm going to save that. In fact, I need to let me just create a new file. It's going to be easier. So I'll make a new Photoshop file, paste that in, and what I need to do is to put this into the alpha channel of this. So just create a new channel, so go to channels, new channel, and just paste that into the alpha, and I can save this as, again, a CryTiff, and I'll call that brick2 underscore displace, so DISPL. It doesn't really matter what suffix you give these, but if I save that as a displace with that suffix DISPL, then it'll know that it's a displacement map. And what I want is just the alpha channel in this case. So I'll save that. And now if I come back to CryEngine, shut down the time of day, bring back my material editor, and what I'm going to do is to tick in to parallax occlusion mapping in the shader generation parameters, and then I need to load in the height map to this height map section of the texture maps. So let's find that displace, like that. And then you can see that this is now actually kind of physically popping in and out around the shape of these bricks. So you'll have two new sliders now, which are POM displacement. So turn that down and it'll kind of stop popping it out, turn that right up and it'll pop it out even more. So I would just leave this until somewhere where the texture doesn't look like it's stretching too badly. So somewhere around here is fine. And then the self shadow strength will just change how much of a shadow that displacement mapping casts. You can also mess with this height bias, which kind of moves it up, it makes it look like it's moving up and down. Not 100% sure. I mean, I know what this does, I'm not totally sure of the purpose of it, what difference it makes. But I'll just leave that set to 1, because that's where it's set to start with. Okay, so there we have some brick, and this is a tiling texture as well, so if I was to just delete that one, turn my snapping on. So I can just tile this up if I want, like that. There we go. Quite small, those bricks, but can scale those up, and we've got a decent spec coming off this, although I think this could do with a bit more work. but we've certainly got all of the elements required for a decent looking material on there. So I wonder if I can scale those all up together. Probably not. What I can do is go to group, yep, scale that up. Okay. So probably looking more of a normal size now. So yeah, I'd want to go and mess with my spec settings and maybe my gloss channel and stuff a little bit. We're definitely not a million miles away from fairly realistic looking bricks. So that's the end of this video.